Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Ready? All right. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Let's do it over. Raise your right hand. You'd think by week 6 I'd have it down, right? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Thank you. Will you please state your name, ma'am?
Bonnie Lee Ewoldt.
And Ms. Ewoldt, did you cause to be filed testimony in this matter along with your husband, Virgil, and on behalf of yourselves individually and a family trust?
Correct.
And do you have presently have 2 parcels of real estate that are targeted by Summit for their hazardous pipeline?
We do.
And those are in Crawford County?
Yes.
And along with filing your pre-filed testimony, you also have caused to be filed a hearing exhibit with some maps that you believe are a more accurate and correct depiction of your land.
Yes, I filed those a couple of days ago.
In anticipation of your testimony today.
Right.
And if we were to go through all of your pre-filed testimony again here today, would your answers be substantially the same other than any corrections you may have?
Yeah, yes, substantially the same. The maps were added so that they give a clearer picture of our concerns about the land. And then there was one more piece of information that I added that came to my attention.
Mr. Jorde, hold on 1 minute. Court reporter, did you get everything? Okay. Better? Okay. Just make sure you're speaking into the microphone. We can have Chuck come back and scoot that up.
Well, is this better?
It is better. Yeah, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Okay. Just make sure you're speaking into that, and that'll move around so you can get that closer wherever you're comfortable. So okay. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Jorde. Go ahead.
Just fine. So could we pull up, please, 598? And ma'am, I'm having them pull up the exhibits that you included.
Yeah, it'd be the last page of that. The first 8 or 9 pages are all maps. Yes, that was the correction right there.
Oh, okay. And so when you are saying correction, is that the line on page 10 of your exhibit 598 that you have? It looks like a red box around.
Right. It's a highlighted entry there on Summit's contact list with us. Well, to go back, I think I forget the exhibit number in my original filing. It had to do with a sign-in sheet when we were going to meet our land agent, Brian McGregor. We had not met with him for a year and a half, but we did agree to meet, and I made an arrangement to meet him at our bank in a conference room at, I think it was 1:30 in the afternoon, and we were there, but he was 45 minutes late, and we left after half an hour of waiting. And I asked the bank for a copy of the sign-in sheet. Since we were in a conference room, we had to sign in and sign out, and that is shown in one of my exhibits. And I had submitted that, but then as I was getting ready to testify today, I was looking at this list of Summit's contacts, and I saw that entry there, and Mr. McGregor put it down as an in-person meeting, and we didn't meet with him because he was a no-show for the meeting. And on top of that, he's got it listed as 8:30 at night or something, and it was 1:30 in the afternoon. So I just wanted to point out that that is incorrect. And to carry it further, we have 3 pages of contact entries from Summit, and some of them are duplicates. Several of them are duplicates, actually. And they also mention several in-person meetings, and we never met with anybody from Summit in these past 2 years. And they said that my husband, they talked to Virgil Ewoldt, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and he only visited with Summit people twice in 2 years, and those are very brief conversations. So I just wanted to point that out, and that's why I added it.
Okay, and we don't have to go to it, but the sign-in sheet from the bank to show who was and wasn't at the meeting, that you were there waiting to talk to Summit and they didn't show up, I just want to reference that's attachment 4040 on page 322 of your pre-filed testimony, right. Okay?
Yeah, and Brian's name's not on there because he didn't sign in.
Understood. Okay, with that, I will offer Exhibit 117 and 598.
Are there objections?
No objection to 598. Is 117 the pre-filed testimony with attachments?
Correct.
No objection to either.
See no objection, the board will admit. Give the way due.
Okay, ma'am, I'm going to tender you for cross-examination questions.
Okay.
Mr. Taylor, I assume you're first.
I assume. Ma'am, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. I understand yesterday was your birthday, but I want to ask you how old you are.
Thank you. Yes, it was my birthday, and I spent it preparing to be here today. So
Yeah, it wasn't much fun, was it?
I've had funner birthdays.
So how long have you owned this land?
My husband.
Objection, Your Honor.
Wasn't ready. Sorry. State your objection.
It's fine. This is the 8th question in every one of these direct testimonies, so my objection is it's asked and answered, and it's not unnecessary to repeat that question over and over for each witness.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I was just trying to lay some introductory remarks.
We'll try to keep it tight. Appreciate it.
When did you first learn that someone wanted to put a pipeline across your property?
Over 2 years ago, I think we got the certified letters in August of 21. Does that sound about right when the certified letters came out? But that's the first we knew about any of this. So.
Now, can we pull up the KMZ map? Does this look like a map of your property?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And it shows the pipeline route, that white vertical line on the west side of your property. Is that your understanding of where the pipeline would be?
It's more toward the middle of the property because the parcels on to the west are also ours.
Okay. Did Summit give you a definite route for the pipeline as you were talking with them?
We haven't talked to them, but this is the route that we've seen in maps.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like there are some terraces that would be crossed by the pipeline.
Correct. This is in Crawford County, down by Denison. It's very hilly land, and yes, there are terraces.
Okay. Do you have any concerns about the impact on those terraces if the pipeline is built?
Absolutely. We've invested money and a lot of time in that. It's, as you can see, it's going to tear right through them.
Did you talk to Summit's agents about that concern?
Nope, we have not talked to Summit's agents. And you want me to explain why?
Go ahead.
Well, when you mentioned the letters that we got from Summit, the certified letters, and I had never heard of carbon capture before that, so I started doing some research. And they are required to have a meeting in every county, or make a meeting available for every county. So I went to the meeting in Spencer, the Clay County meeting, and I had already done some research on carbon capture, and I had watched the Satarsha video before that meeting. And so when I'm sitting in this meeting, I think there were 100 landowners. The room was big and it was full, and a lot of landowners there. And there were some executives there from Summit and a member of the board, and it's a typical meeting. But at that meeting, Jimmy Powell said that somebody asked about the breaks in the line, and he said something to the effect, well, it's going to be 2,000 miles of pipeline. Of course, there's going to be some breaks, but don't worry because it's just a harmless gas and it'll dissipate. And I had already seen the Satarsha video, so I knew something was terribly wrong here. And I haven't really trusted Summit since that day, and that's why we have not visited with any of their land agents.
Okay. Is your property tiled?
Most of it's hilly and it is not tiled, but there is just a little speck of tile on that parcel. Right here, my husband we were going to tag team this, and he was going to talk about the soil and the land, and I was going to talk about other things, but then they did away with virtual testifying, and since he has a bad back, he could not travel to Fort Dodge, so I'm doing the best I can.
Okay.
Some of the stuff is what he told me to say. So anyway, this is a creek going through here. Can I do it on here?
The creek is just...
Yeah, this is right through there. So we have some tiling right through here. And only right here in the corner of that parcel right there, there's a little bit of tile.
The far southwest corner
Of the parcel, yes.
Okay. And the creek runs kind of north and south just to the west of the red area.
Correct.
But that's still your property.
That's our property, and that's where the tiling is on the farm. There is no other tile in the parcels that they're looking at.
What kind of conservation measures, if any, do you do on your property?
Well, we bought the farm in '73 and lived there and farmed it till the early '80s. And my husband made a career change, and we have rented the farm out ever since then. The same family has rented our farm for 40 years, and he does very modern farming with the minimum till and the contour farming and crop rotations. And this was the things my husband was going to talk about. So.
Is this highly erodible land, if you know?
Highly erodible land, and one of the exhibits I submitted was confirmation of that from the Conservation Service.
Okay, was that exhibit attached to your original testimony?
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at your hearing exhibit 598. Is that the map you got with what we call the Exhibit H notice?
Yes. And that is a certified, I think it's the surveyor's certification of having, you all know the story about they can survey because it's legal in Iowa and permission. We did not fight that because we're absentee landlords and we didn't want a renter or relatives to have to deal with it. So evidently they did survey our land in April, although we were unaware. But this map shows one of our major concerns about this. We have highly erodible soil, and we are very concerned about ground compaction because the soil is so fragile. And if you look at this map, you know, they have the permanent easement and the temporary easement, and then they have added to this parcel 6 additional temporary workspace. Did I get that right? ATWS. There are 6 of them in this parcel. And this is what we think is going to happen by looking at this map. We think the 2 toward the south, that's right by a road. And they need extra space there to either cut through the road or bore under the road. I don't know what they're going to do. And that's very concerning because with that additional temporary workspace, they're very close to that, where that tile line is on that parcel. So there's that concern. And then north of that, a little ways, is where the natural gas line cuts through our property. We already have an easement for that. And they have 4 additional temporary workspaces around there. And just to visualize the damage to the land right there, it's just very sad to think about. And in the easement, they're planning to pay 3 years of crop damage, which is pitiful. We bought the land in 1973, and when I was preparing for this hearing, I found the easement from the former owner, and that's also one of the exhibits that shows that Mid-American Energy bought the easement for the gas line through there in 1961. So it had been in for 12 years before we bought the property, and we farmed it for 11 years, and my husband said that when he was, all those years he was farming it, he could still tell where that natural gas line had run because the crops the yield was not as good in that area. So we know the same thing is going to happen here with the CO2 line, only it's going to be worse because they're doing all that extra digging for boring under.
Okay. Does someone also intend to put some other structures on your property other than the pipeline?
We don't know. We haven't talked to them, but there is another map attached. It's I think it's a copy of Goodrich Township, a plat from the plat book.
Is that also in Exhibit 598?
That was one that I added. Yes.
Okay. Can we try to find that?
It's the second to the last page in this series.
Looks like page 8.
Maybe you don't have them in the same order I do. Whoever's running this, it looks like, there you go. Okay, can you zoom in on that to get to our property, which are those 2 red dots right there? Okay, can you zoom in on, make that as big as you can? Oh, well, maybe that one will. Okay, now. All right, we'll just, all right, that'll show what I'm concerned about. All right, these are our 2 parcels right here. And if you, right above us, our neighbor to the north. Now, we've not had this confirmed with Summit. This is an assumption, which I know is dangerous to say in this situation. But if our neighbor to the north, for some whatever reason, has there's a big parcel there, and we don't know why, because there's nothing to bore under. No obvious reason that they would need a bigger parcel there, but we're wondering if perhaps they're planning to store equipment or something there. The reason I say that, or it would be a concern, is that south of us, 2 miles, way down at the bottom, we know for a fact that Summit has an easement there for a large parcel. It's recorded at the courthouse, and they have told our county supervisors they plan to have a launcher receiver site there. So where I'm going with this is, if you look at the roads, it's very hilly in Crawford County, and the roads don't go north and south and east and west. They go around, and we are very concerned that whatever's happening here is connected to what is happening there, and they're going to be going right through our property to get from point A to point B because of the way the roads are. This road right here to the south of our property is a level B road. It's practically impassable in bad weather and in the winter. And if they anywhere else, they would have to go around quite a ways out of their way. So that's another concern of ours, that we're going to have more than the normal amount of compaction.
In the 2 years or so that you've been dealing with this, has that caused you any physical effects?
Oh, I think all of the landowners will agree that we've been under a tremendous amount of stress because of this. Me personally, I have an autoimmune condition, and I've had to increase my meds, because anybody that has an autoimmune condition will tell you that stress is one of the big triggers, and this has been a stress.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have.
Ms. Ryan?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to clarify some of the questions that Mr. Taylor asked you about. And I'll start with those additional temporary workspaces. So just to be clear, Summit has never told you what they're going to do with those workspaces?
No.
Okay.
And as I understand it, in the easement, we don't even get paid for them, because they mention the payment for the permanent easement, the temporary easement, but those are not mentioned.
Okay. And with respect to crop damages, you were talking about the 3 years worth of crop damages. Does your tenant cash rent?
Excuse me?
Does your tenant cash rent your farm?
Yes.
And have you thought about how you would address the problem that your tenant is going to be the one?
That's an interesting thing you bring up, because it just says that, payment 3 years of crop damage on a scale. It will decrease each year, but it doesn't say anything about how it's going to be divided between us and our tenant. That's for us to work out. And I think that's kind of a tension building thing between a landlord and a tenant, to figure that out. Another thing that doesn't seem quite fair.
Yeah, I just have one additional question for you. And I wrote down at the beginning, you said you're doing the best you can, and I believe you about covering all the ground that your husband was going to testify. Do you think it would have been better if he'd been allowed to testify for a jury?
Oh, absolutely. He was very disappointed. And I know with the Americans with Disabilities Act that we probably could have asked, but the IUB's in fine print says with 5 days notice, and this was suddenly changed in the middle of this hearing. Earlier, people could testify virtually, so we just assumed we would be able to also.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Ms. Coles?
Good afternoon, Ms. Ewoldt. Jean Coles Family Farms. I just have a couple of questions. What type of crops do you raise on your land?
Our renter rotates with corn and soybeans and alfalfa.
Okay. Do you run cattle or anything on that with the terracing?
We did when we were farming there, but he does not.
Okay. I was wondering if there were other plantings because you said it was highly erodible soil.
You mean like grass cover? No, it's all crop ground.
Can you please show me where the pipeline for the easement for the natural gas is on your land?
Okay. It comes. You kind of make me nervous. It comes in toward the right about here and kind of goes at a diagonal, and on the southeast corner at a diagonal toward the western side.
All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple questions, ma'am. Do you know a man named Marvin Lugert?
Was he one of the crop yield specialists?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know him, but I've read some of the things.
What have you read of his? Do you know?
Just that he has concerns about the conservation, crop yield, and so forth after a pipeline has been installed, dug in.
Do you recall where you read that? Was that testimony or was that an article of some sort?
I've been at this for 2 years reading this and that. I couldn't begin to tell you where I read that.
Could we pull up page 16 of the witness's testimony? If we scroll to the bottom of that page, ma'am, do you see the bolded question, the very last line of page 16 there?
Yep, I do.
And then moving on to the top of 17, I'm sorry, let's move to the bottom of 17. Do you see that bolded question there?
Yes.
What is your next concern the IUB should be aware of? And can you read that first sentence to yourself, and then I'll ask you a question?
Okay.
Okay. We've been over this with a couple other witnesses. Where you have said as good a location or better, did you mean as good a condition or better?
Yes.
So that's just a typo.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
So, ma'am, Mr. Leonard just pointed out a single typo on 328 pages of documentation. Do you have any idea what the relevance of that was?
I have no idea.
All right. Do you think it matters at all?
To him, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. He asked you about Marvin Lugert, and you talked about yield lost. Again, this isn't a memory contest, but you may recollect that he provided testimony and an opinion based on personal experience of yield lost 20, 30, 45 years into the future, and you're simply stating that you have those same concerns, correct?
We've had those same experiences. We were farming that 20 years after the gas pipeline went through, and we could still notice it. And just last week, I asked our renter if he still knew where the gas pipeline was, and he said no. The soil has finally healed after all that time.
And did you say that went in the 60s?
Yes,
Okay, so after about 60 years, finally the soil healed up.
right.
That's a bit longer than the 3 years of payments they're offering.
Right.
Okay. Were there any other corrections you can think of that we didn't already cover that you wanted to make?
No, I think you've covered the corrections. I do have other concerns I would like to address.
What are those concerns?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
This is a redirect portion of the questioning. It's intended to respond or clarify things that were discussed in the cross-examination to the extent it was cross-examination.
Mr. Jorde?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, are there concerns relative to the cross-examination questions that you weren't able to give complete answers to?
Well, my concerns are about dealing with Summit Carbon Solutions and the use of eminent domain to take private property, which I think has very much to do with our property. I feel like this idea of a private company taking our land for profit when it's not for a public necessity. It's not for the necessity for the on running a society. It's for climate change and carbon capture. And the federal government has not mandated that the state of Iowa do carbon capture. It's not required, and the state of Iowa hasn't even formally acknowledged that climate change is even a thing. So I don't know why we have to do this. It's a private company, and we as landowners have been. Many of us, there are still, as I understand it, around 450 landowners that aren't signing on. And we can't get help from the governor. The governor has refused to meet with us for 2 years. And now we find out that Governor Reynolds and Bruce Rassetter are really good friends. He's contributed over $100,000 to her campaigns. And your FOIA request showed that they've been exchanging over 800 emails between the two of them. So we're not getting help from the governor. We didn't get help from the legislature. There were some very brave legislators who tried to help us at the risk of political suicide, but nothing got passed in either legislative session the last 2 years. And then we go down to our county board of supervisors, and they won't help us because Summit has threatened them with lawsuits if they try to write ordinances for setbacks. So now we're asking the IUB to please help us. And I would just ask you that if you do grant this permit, and I hope you don't, but if you do, I hope you put a stipulation on there that they cannot enact eminent domain until they have permits in North and South Dakota. Because if they got I don't know if there would be a forever easement, but if they got easements through eminent domain and there's no place for this pipeline to go, that's just unbelievable. So that would be my request to the IUB, and those are my concerns.
Okay. And I suppose you've got hundreds of hours wrapped up in this as well.
Hundreds of hours, and the stress and the time and the meetings and just the expense. Well, just for this week, I had a hotel charges last night and the gas money and the time, yes, hundreds and hundreds of hours.
And none of that's being compensated by Summit for your time and troubles?
No.
Thank you. I don't have anything further, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We are going to go off the record for about 15 minutes and step away. We will be right back shortly before 3:10 or 3:10ish. I guess that's 17 minutes. So we'll be off the record for just a few minutes. Yeah, we can. Mr. Jorde, do you know who you'll call next? It can change. We're just curious.
Joan